to Fly on the Wall. We are your hosts. I am Dr. Jonathan Matthias Lassiter.
And I'm Marquita Moten.
So, who the hell are we?
I'm a master's level therapist with a degree in clinical mental health. I'm a business owner. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a friend. I think that's enough for now.
Listen, multifaceted. Hello, can we say that? Complex, multifaceted, wonderfully made human being. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I am so happy to be your friend. Speaking of friends, I'm so happy to be your friend. And to be on this journey in this thing we call life.
Yeah, likewise.
Yes. Besides that, I am also a licensed clinical psychologist, a professor. You know, I had teaching at Churn tomorrow. Hopefully that they grow into adults tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'm author and just out here trying to be a good, upstanding spirit being.
Yeah.
So what we talk about today, Keita?
Well, apparently the U.S. showed up and showed out recently during the election.
And by the U.S., we mean Black people. But yes.
I thought I said people.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and so I think it would be helpful for us to discuss using your voice and piping up when you need to pipe up.
You know, I'm thinking Nice for What by Drake now.
Right.
I need to pipe it up, funny. Nice for what to these? Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think we can talk about that, like really speaking up for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that a lot of people struggle with, and they struggle with it for a lot of different reasons. Mm-hmm. Part of it could be that they're not confident in what they have to say. Mm-hmm. Another part of it is that people think that they may be rude, if they say what they actually are feeling. Mm. And that's so interesting to me that, the ways in which we're socialized and our households growing up is that often is to suppress our desires, our wants, or our expression of those desires and wants in service of other people's emotions. Mm-hmm. Like if I tell my mom that I actually don't like spaghetti, it may hurt her feelings, or worse, it could get me a negative consequence, which is what happened in my case. My mama said, "You're gonna eat them tomatoes," and I don't care.
Uh-huh.
But what all of that does is it teaches us that we are not entitled to our opinion, right? And so we don't speak up sometimes because of that, and because we are questioning ourselves, right? Or we don't want to be mean, or as I said, suffer a consequence for speaking up. So. But as Audre Lorde, I always go back to my ancestors. As Audre Lorde said, our silence will not what? Save us.
Save us.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. So how do you help clients with piping up?
Well, if there's one thing that has always been a component of every therapy session I've ever done, mm-hmm. whether it's individual, with family, couples, children, whatever, communication is always a skill that we practice. Mm-hmm. Because people think of communication as just talking, when communication is so much more than that. It's what are you saying? How are you saying it? Are you listening? Mm-hmm. That's a big one. A lot of people don't listen to understand or to gain insight. A lot of people listen to respond, and that is not effective communication. And that being in a conversation with someone who's listening to respond can also suppress or cause someone to suppress their voice, when it comes to speaking up, because then they feel like they're not being heard anyway, so they'll just be quiet. So the first thing I do is help people assess what it is they're really trying to say. So the way that I do that is I just kind of let them talk. And I have this, some would say, an uncanny knack for getting to the heart of the matter. So I just let them talk for whatever period of time, and I just sit there listening, and then I give them like a very brief synopsis of what I heard them say. And it's usually like a light bulb type of situation for them. So I had a client a long time ago who was talking about her mother. And she was talking about how her mother never took care of her and blah, 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 blah. She was raised by her grandmother, and her grandmother had passed and all these other things. And so I just let her talk. She was very, very angry with her mom. And when she finished talking, I just said, so you've always felt like you just had to take care of yourself. And she just burst into tears. And she was like, I've never had anyone really see that, you know? So that's one way I do it. So I feel like by doing that, it kind of teaches the client simultaneously to really assess the bigger picture of what it is they're saying and really find what's beneath all of the emotion of what they're saying, because that's really what it is. You get to the heart of the matter by getting underneath those emotions, because emotions are always like way up here.
And emotions, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, that's one thing that I do. I have also used a communication, what do we call it? Like a little framework where you teaching I statements. And so you say, when you, then they fill in the blank, I feel blah, 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 because blah, 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 and I want such and such. And so that actually does a lot. It helps with communication and assessment of feelings, because a lot of people will say, I feel like you think blah, blah, blah. That's not a feeling.
Right.
So when they do that using the framework we've created, then it's like, okay, then it forces them to really think about what they actually feel. And so then that tears it down as well. So
no, I've used a similar framework. It really does help. And I remember when I first started using it, I was shocked about how so many people can't distinguish between a thought and an emotion. And it's just like, because I would do it like 2-3 times, be like, no, so that's a thought, so let's try an emotion. And they would give me another thought. It's like, okay, that's still a thought. Let's try an emotion. Emotions. And so I literally have given people emotion charts. Point to the emotion.
Point to the face. Exactly.
But to your point though, you mentioned about, awareness of what one is feeling and what's under the emotion. What I found too is that sometimes people lie to themselves about what they actually want and are feeling, and which leads to an incongruent expression. They express the lie, and then people respond to the lie, and then they still feel unfulfilled, and they wonder why. I'm like, it's because you're lying to yourself and to the other person. So the other person is responding and giving you what you want based on what you told them, which is a lie, right? And so what I sometimes do with clients is that I listen to them, and based on everything that we talked about in previous sessions, I say, okay, so you said this, but you also said this conflicting thing. So what's true? Or sometimes after hearing, I'll just say, is that true though? I hear what you're saying, but is that true? If we think about this, it would suggest that what you actually feel and want is this, but you just told me you want this. Where is that coming from?
Yes. I love that. I've had clients, I like that technique. And it highlights the value of confrontation, which is also a huge component in speaking up for yourself. A lot of people are non-confrontational because they see confrontation as something that incites anger or that might create an argument or whatever. And it doesn't have to be. Confrontation in the way you did it, it was gentle, but it was also putting them in a position to be introspective.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I've told clients, I'm real straightforward with it.
Yes, you are. With everyone, including me.
Well, I give it because I like to get it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not doing anything to them that I can't receive and that I don't wish to receive, because to me that's being authentic. But I have told clients, teenagers, because it was a teenager, let me say that. I told them, you can come to therapy and you can tell me a lie. You can tell all the lies that go with that lie. And that's fine. And we can work on that lie. But at the end of the day, you still have to carry the truth home with you. And if you come here with the lie and we fix the lie, you're not going to feel any better than you do right now.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. Like it's with all the clients, whether that lie is intentional or if it's just a lie that they have convinced themselves to be true because they've been repeating it so long.
And it's comfortable.
Right. And it's comfortable. It feels familiar. So, yeah, but it's not going to serve them.
We could talk about this forever because, I mean, it's something that so many people deal with. And I know that I have constantly dealt with in the past. I'm much better today, but there are even still sometimes today I say, hold on.
Yeah.
You know that wasn't right. You know that wasn't true.
Yeah.
So, but we did an interview. Well, I did an interview. We have an interview for the folks this week. So I did an interview with Alex Brousset, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. And one of my personal good friends, I met him back in 2012, I want to say, when I was still in graduate school and I was in New York City working at a research center. And I met him and we became fast friends and we're still friends today. But he does phenomenal work specializing in LGBT people of color. So we're going to share that interview with you.
Okay, let's take a look.
All right. So I'm here today with one of my good friends. And he reminded me that we go all the way back to 2012.
Well, that's
8-year friendship right here. Long distance and close proximity and long distance as well. Our relationship has endured and gotten even better. So tell the people, who the hell are you?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. My name is Alex Brousset. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing in New York City in the Flatiron District. Who the hell am I? I am a Latino, radical thinking, house music loving, psychodynamic theory geek, providing mental health services to folks in New York City, focusing more on LGBTQ folks, and particularly folks of color. My background, I've been doing, can I curse?
You do whatever you want.
Okay. I was just thinking, I've been doing this since I was 19. Because I started at a dual diagnosis residential home as a residential counselor. So a lot of my early work was working in community settings, mostly with folks that were homeless, homeless youth. So, that opens you up to a variety of issues that folks bring to the table. And I think that, working in community settings really taught me how to work with people. Because when you're working in those settings, folks are real direct about what they like and what they don't like. And so you get to quickly pick up on how to actually be with people in very difficult situations and in random settings. So then moving into private practice, once I moved to New York, what has been interesting has been letting go of a lot of the kind of social worker dynamics where you can quickly build trust because, you know, they want something to eat, they need a Metro card, you know, get them some housing. So you're building trust real quick. Working in private practice, trust takes a lot of time. It takes much longer because folks, you know, they're paying you directly and they're just trying to see what you're about, try to see what you can offer them. And particularly when we work with complex trauma, a lot of trust issues come into play. So that's me. You know, I focus complex trauma, as I was just saying. And yeah, thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for doing this. And, you know, we talk all the time. Not as much as we used to because, you know, we're at different places and, you know, the academia got me running. But we often have very deep talks about both our personal life and our professional life. And you mentioned complex trauma.
Yes.
And so that's something that a lot of us from marginalized communities deal with. We navigate that. And it's even more complicated by the current events of COVID-19 and COVID-16-19, as some folks have been calling the upsurge in anti-Black violence, state-sanctioned violence and murder. And so I'm wondering, how has that been showing up in your practice, in the work that you do?
So what's been very difficult for people, particularly my clients of color, is that the events that have been happening have been a re-traumatization of things that they've been experiencing their entire lives. And that layered with a health crisis and an administration that is literally not giving a fuck, and actively pushing white supremacy, actively pushing domestic terrorism, white domestic terrorism. Folks are feeling a lot more triggered, and their own traumas are being amplified by what's happening. Not to mention the level of uncertainty and the direction that we're moving into fascism, if we actually, you know, end up there, right?
Yeah,
so, you know, feelings of melancholia, feelings of anxiety, suicidal ideation, hopelessness, these things are really coming to the surface and really coming to the table. And the biggest thing, I think, for folks is the realization that we do not have control over anything except ourselves, except our thoughts, our emotions. And that's a big, big difficulty for people to realize that at the end of the day, that is the only thing we have control over. Particularly when, you know, we do as humans experience thoughts and emotions that just hit us. There's a feeling of, what do you mean I have control over that? It just comes. Yes, it just comes, particularly with the traumas around you. They ignite certain emotions and thoughts. And the gentle reminder is that what we do with those emotions and thoughts, how we are with them, is the control that we have around them. So that's been kind of the biggest piece of the work lately, is not only holding space for the trauma that's coming into the room and providing some soothing kind of techniques and also language that folks need, reframing of things to kind of be able to just get up and continue each day, but also the gentle reminders of, at the end of the day, my clients, every one of us, do have a way to manage how we feel and how we think. And during these really difficult times, I think that is our most important tool to keep reminding ourselves of.
No, thank you for that. I mean, what I hear you drawing attention to is how all things are interconnected. Like, the complex traumas may be from this moment, or they may be from childhood and other things that happen in our lives, but they're heightened in this moment, given all the interlocking systems of oppression and that are currently traumatizing and re-traumatizing us as a society. Yes. You do psychodynamic theory. And so, for the folks that don't really know psychodynamic theory, what is that? So, can you give us like a layperson's definition
Sure.
of psychodynamic theory? And tell me, how does that come into your work with clients with complex trauma?
So the big difference between psychodynamic theory from what more general known therapeutic modalities such as CBT or DBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. These are very well known amongst everybody. It's kind of like pop psychology. Psychodynamic theory absolutely works and focuses on the here and now, but it really takes into consideration everything that happened to you from 0 to 20 and the impact that those relationships, that those experiences, those events had on you as an adult, has on you as an adult, how they affect the way you think, how they affect the way you perceive, how they affect the way you relate, right? And specifically, the area that I focus on, that I'm still learning, I'm cultivating it more and more. I think in this field we're always learning. Is the niche is relational psychoanalysis. So the difference with relational psychoanalysis is that you are not only focusing on the events that happen with that individual in their upbringing, in their young adulthood, so what's going on intrapsychically in their minds, but also what's happening interpersonally in the room, right? So the work is not only looking at their world, but also the world is being created inside the therapeutic relationship. And so what I mean by that is that, when two people meet and they interact, they're bringing their present day selves, but they're also bringing, their experiences from their past. And there is a subconscious energetic exchange that's going on. And so this comes out with, there's a gesture you make. There is a tone in your voice. There are the words that you choose to use to express, to relate, to convey. And then the other person may receive them differently. And so that's where you're having both people's interpsychic worlds meeting each other. And there can be either a merger, a cohesion, or a collision. And that's where in the room, I'm not only working with what happened to you when your mama beat you, but we're also talking about what's happening here in the room with what I just said, or what I may have just, evoked in you. Because both of them inform me as the clinician of how you may be doing in your own world and why you may be having difficulty in your world. The challenge of the work is that when people bring complex trauma, there is so much compassion and empathy that is needed for folks to heal. And then the next part that I find the most challenging is that then you have to gently call out folks how they are replicating their own difficulties by emulating things that happened to them when they grew up, by playing out or acting out those traumas with people in their life, but not really being aware because they feel, that a lot of ways they're still the victim of what happened to them. And that's real. That survival is real. And so the gentle reminders there is to highlight to folks the ways that you think, the ways that you're choosing to relate, the ways that you are perceiving. How are they serving you? What function do they have in your life? Might they be protective methods that once upon a time worked wonders and they worked great, but now they're backfiring and they're causing more problems. And so, you can get a lot of pushback where people are basically saying, oh, so you're blaming me? Like, it's not that I'm blaming you. It's not about blaming. Even when we talk about your childhood, it's not about blaming your parents. It's just about understanding the root of things. And now bringing in, societal trauma, racial trauma, now we're adding layers to what that person has been through. And reminding folks, for example, the way that you're beating yourself up, the way that you're putting yourself down, that may not only be your environment at home, but if you're a person of color, you got to take in mind the racial oppression that you've been around, how that is another layer that is adding to your negative narrative, to how you put yourself down, how you oppress yourself, given what you've been around. I think I just went on a tangent. Did I answer the question?
No, I'm sitting here like in the amen corner. No, you answered it very well and very thoroughly. Thank you. Yeah, and, I mean, and not just the person of color, but of any intersectional.
Yes.
If you also have a person of color who's LGBT or, you know, struggling financially, so on and so forth. So I'm wondering, given all that you discussed, because we as a country, as a globe, really, and as people of color and as people from, you know, sexual or gender minority communities, for a long time, this isn't new. You know, oppression didn't start with the election of 45. It didn't start, you know, it started really at the founding of this nation, right? And so it was happening globally before that, but in this country, it started at the very beginning. So this is nothing new, but it is, I think, heightened in the American imagination right now. And so with that, what is one thing that you think that people should remind themselves of every day?
What is one thing? What, sorry?
That you think people should remind themselves of every day as we navigate this treacherous environment in which we're all living?
I think one thing to folks to remind themselves of is what negative things that I'm thinking are actually mine, and what negative things that I'm thinking have been conditioned into the way that you think. And to be able to separate the two, to understand where the work goes. I say that because a lot of our symptoms, so anxiety, feeling depressed, unhealthy relationships with substances, unhealthy relationships with sex or with people, come from the way that we think about ourselves, come from the way of how we talk to ourselves. That will either heighten those symptoms or soothe them and decrease them. And that work is some of the most challenging work for folks because it can feel impossible. And so really deciphering where the conditioning came from, where these thoughts were implanted or how were they learned, can help an individual kind of parse them out and see where the work is supposed to go. And then apply whatever techniques can be helpful to bring down the intensity of those symptoms. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, is that helping clients realize that they do have the power, even when they feel like victims, even when they feel as if they have no power, they do have the power. And the way they take that power is by doing exactly what you just said, trying to figure out how are they contributing to their own disempowerment, and how are they contributing to their empowerment through all of these rote actions and beliefs and thoughts that we have. So absolutely. I appreciate you so much. We're out of time, but I just love you so much. I just love you so much. And with this doggone pandemic is over, then I can't wait to be able to hug you and go out to eat and everything and all that stuff. And we still got to vacation together. What'd you say?
Yes, we do. Go dancing. Yes, we have to
go dancing. Yes. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, because you are out there helping the people heal and thrive. And I just really appreciate you as the person you are, and also as the professional that you are. I respect you so much. There aren't that many mental health professionals I respect, because a lot of them are doing damage. I mean, yes. I'm laughing, I'm smiling, but I would say every mental health professional is not created equally, but you are one of the top, in my opinion, and you're someone I really respect. And so I really appreciate you taking time out to do this. Is there anything about projects or things that's going on that you want to tell our audience about?
At the moment, no. I've been just focusing more on client work, and I'm still in my psychoanalytic program. I'm second year, loving it. So at the moment, just kind of focusing on those two things. I think with the pandemic, work has gotten more heightened. So folks that I haven't worked with in a while are actually coming back because they're needing support for what's happening. So things are pretty full there.
So you're booked and busy.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll talk to you offline soon.
Okay.
And thank you so much for
Thank
talking
you.
to us at Fly on the Wall.
Bye-bye.
All right. So we're back. I just love Alex.
I'm sure. How could you not?
I just love it. He's just such good people.
Yeah.
And so I guess we should wrap up. I don't have much to add. Oh, resources.
Okay, yes. I'm glad that you highlighted a resource because I have an excellent resource that I would like to share with people. It is a journal.
Hi.
So this is one of my mini journals. And as you can see, it's beautiful. I intentionally choose ones that I think are beautiful because it is the sacred space for me. But kind of touching back a little bit on the topic of discussion, speaking up for yourself, journaling helped me find my voice. And like you said, sometimes I still have a challenge with speaking up and how to speak up in certain situations. But I've been journaling since I was 11. I really was not one to speak up for myself or say what I really felt or wanted because of all that disappointment stuff and the possibility of having somebody mad at me, blah, 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 all that stuff. I've let that go, by the way. But journaling helped me do that because I knew that it was a place that I could write out all of my desires, all of my thoughts, whatever, my fears, no matter what. And there was no judgment. There was no feedback other than my own. And so it really helped me assess myself. And that is what gave me the confidence to then be able to step out and just say, you know what, let me try doing that out loud. And it did take a while. It was not immediate. So yeah, but it was definitely valuable and still valuable to me because I still journal to this day. So get you a journal.
Get you a journal. It's something that I recommend for a lot of my clients too. And so I don't journal anymore on a regular basis, but as a young, anxiety-ridden adolescent, depressive adolescent as well, I used to write song lyrics a lot, and that was my form of journaling. So I remember one time, I share a quick story. One time I was in like 8th grade and people, they bullied me constantly. They took no days off of bullying me. No one ever like hit me, but they called me every name in the book but a child of God, you know? And so I remember one day being in class because I had finished my work because I've always been highly intelligent. So I had finished my work. And I just started writing a song called I Am Marvelous. And it was just that sort of affirmation things, right? That helped me make it through that day.
Yeah.
You know, but it's that sort of thing. So I totally second that. People, get yourselves a journal and find your voice. Yeah. All right, so let's do a replay and wrap it up. So what are our take homes we want to leave the people with?
So take homes, thoughts are not feelings. So really take the time to assess what you are feeling in your communication. Be clear, listen. When it's your turn to listen, and listen to gain insight. Don't just listen to respond, because that ain't listening. Get yourself a journal. And I want people to know that they deserve to be heard. Let me say that. I like that earlier. I know we ran out of time, but I like that earlier you touched on the whole parental satisfaction component that all of us were raised with to a degree. And I know that some people get stuck in that mode. And so there's always the desire or the feeling that they need approval from someone else, or that what they feel, what they think, or whatever is not valuable in the way that it truly is, because we grew up for so long with 18 years, 19 years of your life, you are subject to the will of your parents. And so for a lot of people, it's hard to come from under that. So I want people to know you deserve to be heard. You deserve to be loved. You are marvelous, like your song lyrics. And to keep in mind that a belief is just a thought that you've continued to think. So if there's something you want in life, something you want to be in your life, just start thinking differently and think it every day until it becomes a belief. And then you'll be that. So, yeah, but you deserve to be heard. So feel empowered in your voice.
Yes. And the only thing I'll add to that is that sometimes those thoughts that we think can be lies. We could be lying to ourselves, right? And so
think true thoughts.
think true thoughts. Think the truthful thought, right? So
yes,
getting the habit of asking ourselves, is this true?
Yes.
Is this true? And I have to do that again to this day, sometimes, especially in communications with colleagues and trying to manage all of that stuff. I'm like, is this true?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, so I'll leave the people with that, and we'll leave the people with that, and see you next time. So be sure to like, subscribe, share it with your mama and them, and comment, and let us know how you are finding ways to pipe up and speak your truth, right? And so we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah.
Bye, Keita.
Bye. See you later.